But we presented generally our own experience to see what they could learn from it. So the first bullet point is an important one, particularly because in South Africa, every time a minister changes, the Director General changes, the Deputy Director Generals change, the Chief Director changes, and it makes for a great deal of instability. Some of you may remember that I did say yesterday, if you want to continuously improve things, you need stability. We benefited greatly from the fact that we had, for about 10 years, one minister, and that was Trevor Manuel. Almost at that time, we had one commissioner, Pravin Gordon. And that enables you to try things, to succeed in some, to make mistakes, to learn. And I can say without fear of any contradiction, there was never any negative interference from the ministers. I spoke about the power of the higher purpose yesterday. You want an organization that is vision-led and values-driven. I didn't speak about a campaign approach yesterday, but some of you, it's within your memory, you would know that SARS has led many, many campaigns to demonstrate its capability. What worked well? Standardization. In every organization, well, there might be a few exceptions, but very few, you can standardize things. And I know all of us like to think our jobs cannot be standardized. We all like to think our job is very special. But almost in any job, you can standardize 80% of it. And that's the steady state operations. You then have exception management, which is a small part of what you should be doing. And then, of course, there's continuous improvement, and then there's transformation, the very big change. I spoke about data and information. I didn't speak about this. It's worth going into. Firstly, again, coming from where I come from, it was a sharp learning curve. Only individuals can be held accountable, not committees. If you can't get things to the point that an individual is responsible, forget. It will not be done. And take decisions to the right level of authority. And encourage officials to resolve matters outside formal meetings. Now, that doesn't mean informally, it's formal. But you don't need 5 people, 6 people, 10 people meeting to make decisions. It's only when there are significant variances, exceptions, trends, and matters requiring interfacing between accountabilities that you should be discussing these in committees. Last point, I did touch on it, but again, I think it's worth going into. Very early on, we said we have a zero tolerance to corruption. Within months of being in SARS, we had a policy saying, no gifts policy. Nobody in SARS can receive a gift. If you are having coffee, if you are having lunch, you will pay. You can come back and claim it. If you are given a present, like sometime you're making a talk somewhere, it is at an institution, they give you something, you will take that straight to an office that we had, you will put it in there. Once a year we had an auction, we raised money, and we donated that money. Then we had DOPI, that's a declaration of private interest. And it was something that was alive. It wasn't a black hole into which you just put a piece of paper. We had people that analyzed the DOPI. They came back to you and said, what about this, what about that? And that DOPI had to be refreshed every year. Goes without saying, there was employee vetting, supplier vetting, and there was what we call SARS, Suspicious Activity Reporting System. And then we had, of course, your normal controls, and we had an internal investigation capability. The third bullet point is 4 levels of defense integrated into processes and management. There are actually even more, but there are 4 basic ones. The first is your vertical. You have your normal command system. You build governance into that. The second is your peer. You have to work a system where peers manage each other. And I'm going to come back to that at the end. You then have internal audit. We had a strong internal audit capability. We had about 150 people. And over the last few years, we managed to get the Auditor General to agree that they would not audit where the internal auditors have audited. Oh, sorry. They would accept the work of internal audit in certain areas. And lastly, I mentioned the systemic approach yesterday. I'm not going to go into that now. Okay, restoring SARS. So, firstly, let me just say something, that is that it won't be easy to do. It will be difficult to do. I think it's always more difficult to fix something that's broken. We've also let things happen in SARS that had never happened. We never had any racial tension in SARS. It was never an issue. From very early on, it was never an issue. We made it clear that SARS is for everybody, that as an individual, if you performed, you were welcome. If as an individual you didn't perform, you were not welcome. And in fact, one of the very first decisions we made, there was something in all government institutions around the 90s that people could take early retirement, voluntary retirement. One of the first things we did is that we stopped the voluntary service retirement. The reason that we stopped, the people who take early retirement and move away are actually the people that have the most skills and capability. And they feel the most confident, and they will go. And you will reduce the gene pool in the institution. So one of the first things we stopped. And we said, everybody is welcome here. At that stage when we were there, SARS was about probably 90% white. By 2014, it was about 65, 70% black. Black meaning Africans, Indians, and coloreds. But we didn't force anybody out, because as we expanded the work, we did more recruitment, and we tried to get more representation into the institution. Race has become a factor. I mean, Tom says he's the first black commissioner of SARS. It's a lie. There's actually two. The one is Pravin Gordhan, who regards himself as a black person, and the other is Opa Magashula. Okay, so it reminds you a bit of Trump. People say things that are outright lies, and they keep saying it. So when you open that genie in the institution, it's not going to be so easy just to put it all back. So it's going to require some hard work. Be suspicious of anybody who has easy solutions. Be suspicious of anybody that is so convinced that they are right. We should ask for the analysis first. We should ask for the plan. And we should ask, how will we know that you are succeeding? Sorry?
How would you know? I can't hear you.
How would you know that a plan is succeeding if all of these things are not clear and if you cannot be measured? Now, yesterday I dealt with many of those things. Is there anything there that you want me to go into at all? Sorry?
To answer a question, to ask.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Why?
Why does SARS allow certain people to get away with murder?
Sorry?
Could you share that?
Why did SARS allow certain people to get away with murder? So my question would be, what period are you talking about? Are you talking about after 2014? Are you talking about before 2014? If it's before 2014, I can give you some answers. I was there.
Before and after?
Well, then you have to be a little bit more specific. You have to say, you're talking about X, Y, Z, and perhaps then I can help. Okay, there's one thing that I want to expand on. That's the compliance strategy, the compliance model. Simply to say this, that approach you can use for anything. You can use it to bring about discipline in the use of our roads. You can use it to fight crime. There's 3 levers: inform people, educate people, be transparent, make it easy to do the right things, make it difficult to do the wrong things. You can't have good discipline on the roads if your traffic lights are not working, if your stop signs are not clear, if the verges have grown so that they're blocking the view. Okay? And thirdly, have credible enforcement. It applies to any situation. We can all use that. We shouldn't rush big change. When something is broken, we need to stabilize it. We need to fix basic processes, policies, procedures. There's a big problem with IT, but it's not my view that people need to jump into it and try and overhaul it overnight. develop the IT plan, develop the medium-term change plan, and revisit the models, the strategies that we've been using. In the present executive in SARS, and it's been like that since 2014, the only person that has some knowledge of the core business is Mark Kingon, who is now the acting commissioner. There's nobody there that knows the core business. So it doesn't...
May I just ask, are you saying that's because Tom Miani got rid of everybody?
Yes. Yes.
Everybody who knew what they were doing?
Yes.
What was the question again?
I said, are you saying that's because since 2014, Tom Miani got rid of everybody who knew what they were doing?
Yes. So it's a no-brainer. The first thing to do, and it should have been done months ago, hasn't been done, would be to appoint an interim executive. The next thing to do is to draw functional expertise to the upper levels of management. These are people who have been in the business 5 years, 10 years, 12 years. Pull them up to support the executive. Encourage those who were driven away to return. Now, many people asked me yesterday, more than one, on the side, will some of the people be willing to go back? I believe some of them will. There will be some who have moved on, they've got good jobs, they've moved to different cities. It'll be difficult for them. But many, many would go back. One person phoned me yesterday, it's the start of the new year, to say, I've been trying to get back into SARS. I've left 2 messages, nobody has got back to me. And this person used to head the large business center. So, there will be some. All our managers were chosen on the basis of values and their behavior. I don't know whether I told you yesterday, but SARS had a test, a number of tests that they put people through. These tests were run by independent institutions. It was a requirement that everybody go through that test, and the results counted. We had a letter out that said, if you wanted to ignore the results, you need to explain why. According to the Nugent Commission, only one member of Tom's EXCO passed that test. All the others failed it. So we need to go back to that. And it's not something new, it's there, it exists. And base our recruitment, base our selection, base our placement on values and behavior. This is the leadership competency model that we dealt with yesterday. Somebody raised the point about what was the motive for taking over SARS. And we explored some of that, and I did say I will refer to it. The Nugent's recommendations do cover those issues. As I say, he asked maybe there's a role for his commission to continue to play, but that's the decision the president is going to make. But equally, they can set up other independent committees to review all of that. Restore the large business center. It's a no-brainer. Every advanced country has a large business center. And it's not just about collecting the money, by the way. It's about providing a service to the large businesses. The second bullet point refers to enablement. This is a term we use, so it may not be used universally. This is the design and policy writing, procedure writing part. I said yesterday that we had something like 250 people. This is what they did, day in and day out. And you need that capability so that your implementation can happen. By the way, that's one of the reasons why our government implements so little. It has a high-level aspiration, and it tries to implement a high-level aspiration. It is impossible. If you don't break it down and get it into plans that says this exactly must be done by this person, by when, this is what it'll cost, it's not going to get done. Enforcement units. I said yesterday, if you read Jacques Pauw's books, he's very clear about it. That one of the reasons to take over SARS was to break its enforcement capability. By the way, how many of you read Jacques Pauw's book? Wow. All right. Good.
One man's name appears very often in that book.
Well, some people accuse us of writing the book for Jacques. Well, seriously though, I went to the launch of the book in Johannesburg, and it was packed to the rafters. And I was in this mall, and I couldn't even get anywhere near, so we were upstairs. And then in Pretoria, I also went. Well, I live in Pretoria, and it's sort of, 200 meters from my home. So I was there, and Praveen Gordon was there. And by the way, SARS is next door to the mall. And there were lots of SARS people there. And they all came to say, listen, we must autograph the books. So there were queues, so we autographed the books. Okay. So some people took photographs. And of course, people said the next day, we are the writers of this book. Okay, specialist units in the legal division were also destroyed. You've got to bring that back. The middle bullet point. You know when you're dealing with a complex case, on a financial case, and even on a criminal case dealing with these matters, they run for many years. They run for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. Mr. King was 10 years. How do you keep that commitment, that focus? And how do you do it when around you everything is falling apart? I mean the law enforcement system, and even take things to civil litigation. They don't happen as a matter of course. You have got to make sure it happens. So when things reach a certain stage, and we had criteria, we called it a significant case. A significant case. So, and we set up a significant case management unit. It's like a project team. I mean, the original people who work on the cases, they work on it, but this project team pulls it together. Also because different functions are involved in a case. I mean, when you audit somebody, then the auditors are involved. Okay? You make an assessment. The person objects. Then legal gets involved into it. And then if it goes to court, then the litigation team gets involved in it. If there's a debt to collect, there's a debt team to work on it. And you remember what I said yesterday, when things get complex, no matter how good you are in managing the vertical, you will fail if you cannot manage a horizontal. And the significant case management units came in to manage the horizontal. It goes without saying that also was destroyed. The revenue analysis unit, if some of you listen to the Nugent, the submissions to the Nugent Commission, there was a gentleman there, can't remember his name now. He was the head of the revenue analysis unit. That's all they did. They analyzed the revenues coming in every day, every week, and every month. He gave testimony to say that SARS had begun to manipulate the revenue. Refunds were being held back so that the revenue figures would look good. So that unit has to be reconstituted, and we've got to make sure we have professional people there that are not going to manipulate the numbers. The same applies to the compliance analysis unit. The head of that unit also gave testimony before Nugent. These are things all of us will be quite familiar with. We need to communicate. We need to restore national and divisional management forums. And then we need to establish a robust taxpayer complaints management system. Taxpayers' complaints are not a nuisance. They're very valuable. One of the first things Pravin Gordon did is he created a complaints unit in his own office, and it was there for years. Every complaint was lodged and then delegated to people to solve. It's actually part of your quality management system. I'm coming to the end now. Performance management. What you would have heard a lot of in the last 3 or 4 years is about revenue collection. That's like a private company only talking about its profits. Any company, whether public or private, focuses on one deliverable is heading for trouble, because everything else breaks. You need to have, and I'll go through them just now, you need to cover the whole of the business. And it's important that when you put this together, there are certain tensions. So let me give you an example. You have auditors in SARS. They audit you and they give you an assessment. So if you say to auditors, I want increased assessments and I want 20 billion rands of assessments, human nature is such you'll get 20 billion rands of assessments. What the quality of that will be is another issue. You may actually find that only 10% of that is valuable. And then you may find that only 50% of what is valuable you can actually collect. So in the organization, and I believe in any organization, you get these tensions. And you must work the tensions so that they are constructive. So you will find a tension between auditors and those who collect the money. And just like that, in every institution, in most processes, there are these tensions. And the tensions must be constructively utilized. Also design your deliverables so that people collaborate. If you design your deliverables only for individuals, you'll drive everybody apart because they all chase this for their bonuses. So in a good institution, you have a mix of individual deliverables and collective deliverables. It's a way of putting people to work together. And as I said earlier, balance all the compliance levers, that is education, service, and enforcement. This is my last slide, but I'm going to spend a bit of time on this, and then we will have more discussion. This is an original slide, around 2013. Are you able to read some of it? Okay, so there are 4 big groups for our outcomes: and increased customs compliance, increased tax compliance. Then the other 2, the third one is a very interesting one. It's about the ease and fairness of doing business with SARS. How easy do we make it? How difficult do we make it? And the next one is about how efficient and how effective we are. There's the last point, the institutional respectability. Okay? So that's the 4 big groups. You can break up what SARS does into these 4 processes. Registration and licensing, because we do some licensing on the customs side. So what is the yearly people who are registered. When you do registration drives, how many people do you find who are not registered? These are all data that's available. Filing. How many people file for which taxes? How many people file on time? How many people late filing? Declarations. How many self-assessments? How many assessments? Other assessments? How many objections? How many appeals? All of that you can count. And then payment. Payments on time, late payments, difficult debt. Okay. That's a balanced way in which to understand the institution. And if you've got all of that, by the way, you won't have it right in one go. It takes years to get this thing right. And when you have all of it and you're managing all of it, then you'll get the outputs and the outcomes that you want. Over and above this, SARS is part of a governmental system. I said yesterday, you cannot have excellence in one place for long. So we have tax identification, which is dependent on an ID identification. If our ID identification does not have integrity, eventually your tax identification will not have integrity. If law enforcement is not working well, it will impact on SARS. So SARS is part of a governmental system. In addition to this, it's not reflected here, but it's reflected in some of the individual scorecards. It should be reflected on my scorecard. There are deliverables there about working with the criminal justice system, about working with Home Affairs. Again, it's about working across, managing the horizontal. That is what needs to be done. There's no rocket science in it. Yeah.
Pillay, how can one person form can manage a huge institution like that without having a nervous breakdown? I mean, surely to God, the government realised that there's a problem there, and why are they not recruiting people to give the man the support he needs? I mean, I know my local accountant picks up the phone and speaks to him in Johannesburg. Where's it in Johannesburg? Or is it
Pretoria.
So, I mean, the fact that he's got to run this whole business and he's got time to speak to an accountant friend of mine in Rotherham.
Yeah.
I mean, is it possible for
It's-
one person with that?
No, it's
His institutional knowledge to try and run a huge 14,000 with
yeah.
people.
Look, the Mark is appointed as acting commissioner. In law, he has all the powers that a commissioner has. He has all the powers that the law gave Tom. Of course, Tom took on powers that he didn't have. But Mark has got all those powers. Tomorrow, Mark can say, I'm going to put in place an interim EXCO. But one of the first things he said after he became acting commissioner, he talked about my EXCO. That was actually Tom's EXCO. It's still Tom's EXCO. Now, I said yesterday that 200, just Nugent's number, 200 senior people left. Many others have been sidelined. They're still in SARS. They're sidelined. I mean, there is, for example, Tinus Marx. When I came to SARS, I found him there. He was a middle-level manager. And we worked with him, we promoted him. He was a very senior manager. He was in our EXCO at one time. He's still there. He's got another 2 years to go. One of the things that Tom and company did is that they sidelined him, put him in a corner. If you heard the Nugent Commission, there are some people who have been put in a corner for 3 years, getting a salary, but actually not working. And those people are there. And Mark has the authority to form this interim EXCO. He has the authority to draw functional expertise, the Tinus Marx of the world, draw them up into the first 3 levels of management. And again, you can encourage those who are driven away to say, come back. Not everybody will come back, but some will come back. I mean, just one thing. I bumped into somebody on Saturday at the mall. He came to me, an African gentleman. He introduced himself. He was about 40. And he said, you may not know me, but I know you. He shook my hands and he said, I work for SARS. I was ready to leave about a year ago. I was fed up of the place. This is not the SARS that we joined. And somebody prevailed on me to stay. I've moved from where I was working. I'm now in a different section. I'm enjoying it. It would be good if you people come back. So there are people there. I meet them and I hear from them. And I think people just need signals. And then they'll put their hands up and they'll come.
Why is Mark not doing that?
I don't know. Maybe he doesn't feel confident. Look, Mark wasn't in the EXCO when we were there. He was in 2 levels below. Okay? He might not feel confident enough. Look, it's at a senior level, you must be able to put in place systems and manage systems. It's not managing a transaction or even a handful of transactions. That's a big difference. Yes?
Nugent Commission recommended that there should be a body to oversee the commission.
Yes.
Do you agree with that?
Look, Nugent Commission talks about an Inspector General. Our Civilian Intelligence Service have an Inspector General. Our Police Intelligence have an Inspector General. The Defense Force has an Inspector General. I don't think it has helped them.
Sorry?
I don't think it has helped them. So, it's this thing I was saying yesterday. It's not about one thing. I say we speak about the US. You can see how one person like Trump can start to damage things, even after 200 years of democracy. So, whether it's a board, whether it is an Inspector General, if you don't fix everything else up, and if we don't at the ministerial level understand what needs to be done with public administration, you put an IG, we'll still have difficulties. I mean, the IG for intelligence, we had some dealings with the previous IG for intelligence. There's a new one now. She didn't give me confidence. She didn't give me confidence. Look, there are other things Nugent recommends. He recommends that the process of appointing the commissioner should be a transparent one. Should be a fit and proper person. It shouldn't be done the way Tom was appointed. I mean, the Minister of Finance then said he was called into an office by President Zuma's private legal advisor, that is Hali. Yes. And he was told by Hali, come and meet the next commissioner of SARS. Okay. So if you have things like that, it is going to go wrong. So Nugent recommends a fit and proper person. It must be a transparent process. I think that's good. I think the other thing that needs to be clarified is that Tom said he's not accountable to the minister. That must be fixed. There's no way that he can be accountable, or any commissioner can be accountable only to the president. The president has got a whole set of people that he's managing. He's managing ministers. He's not going to manage the commissioner. The commissioner's leave, the commissioner's pay, issues that SARS are dealing with on a daily basis. It's not. That's got to be fixed. Yes?
Do you consider going back to help?
Yes.
fix up SARS?
Oh, yes. It's our country duty. By the way, I recognize you, don't I? You. Yeah. There's something familiar. Maybe. Yeah.
Some of the evidence given to the Nugent Commission was that the IT system could completely fall over in 6 months.
Yeah.
Is that, what's your opinion on that? And do we get much input from other revenue authorities worldwide for either systems? The second question really is that what's changed a lot, and it surprises me that SARS doesn't have it at the moment, or it's not envisaged, is that because the balance sheets have moved offshore, with these foreign investment allowance, I mean, particularly in individual, there's huge amounts of now offshore sort of money, and is there any vetting of income or capital gains or anything, is there any capability here to vet that?
Yeah. Well, look, everything that I've shown you here as to say what we did in SARS, 80-90% of it comes from our understanding of what is done in the US, what is done in Canada, what's done especially with the Australians, the New Zealanders. So we learned a lot. The compliance model, the compliance strategy, that philosophy, that thinking, comes from all of them. That's what we all use. There are certain things that we tweaked, we refined, but basically it came from them. We had great, I mean, we had, for months, we had Americans to come and help us with debt collection. We had Germans for months sitting in SARS, helped us with our audits. We had Scandinavians helping us with our first audit tool. So we had great relations with them, and we learned from them. So, the thing about the IT, and again, people who are not systemic don't understand that. It's a whole system. If you start neglecting it, you start making changes here that you don't make throughout. You start breaking the system. And that is what is happening. One of the IT people who were being interviewed, Barry Hall was being interviewed, and he was asked by Nugent, are there people in SARS who understand enough to be able to fix this? And Barry said, in my view, there are people there that I know that I've worked with. If they are given the authority to fix it, with some help from the outside, they'll be able to do it. Okay. Then on the issues of offshore, let me just answer it this way by saying that around 2013, 2014, and 2015, 2016, I was no longer there in 15 and 16, big advances were made internationally by all these countries applying themselves to the movement of capital. And all these 120 tax authorities set up what is called the Global Forum. And they apply themselves. Today there is in place laws and policies that force countries to provide information even from the tax havens. It's there today. But these are tools that you must use. You must have the people, and then they must work these tools. In fact, we are part of signatories to these things where there is there's supposed to be automatic exchange of data. So in other words, if you are a South African citizen and you have money in some other jurisdiction and we have a treaty with that, there's an automatic exchange. We don't have to ask. They will say, Mr. X, they will send you every year. The data will come through. Now, who was the first chair of the Global Forum? And who chaired it for 3 years? South Africa chaired it. Mr. Kosi Low, who was heading our law department, he chaired the Global Forum for 3 years. That was our standing in the international community. So the tools are there. Now you've got to make sure that the people know. When they smash the LBC, and a lot of the people that have the knowledge of these things left. But you've got to bring them back now, and you've got to start again.
Why is it taking so long?
Well, the fact of the matter is Tom was only kicked out in, November, December? Yeah, right. And he's still going he's out, but he's still going to Constitutional Court.
Nothing can be done until he's...
No, it can be done. It can be done. Things can be done.
He's still drawing his salary? Or is he...
No, he's out. He is out. But he's still going to Constitutional Court. He's got money. Yeah.
It would seem to me that if you've got people sitting there with expertise who held those jobs before,
Yeah.
the easiest and the first thing to do is call them.
Yeah.
I say, get going. You do this,
Yeah.
do that, start, and you'll have gaps. But
Yeah.
at least you can concentrate on the gaps and you can relax about where the good guys are.
Absolutely.
Why is
I can't.
a team still there?
Well, look, yes, some of Tom's people are still there, that's one. Two is, you must remember something. Again, if you follow the Nugent Commission, they talked about an abusive setup. People have been terrified. People have been falsely charged for things. You know, by the way,